Welcome to the Fantastic Fogey's Happy Hour. I'm the Fantastic Fogey. I'll get happy, or it'll take at least an hour. As you know, the format for the Happy Hour is simply this. You send in questions, and I answer them. Are my answers right? I'll let you decide. Our first question today comes from Warren, a college student from Dismal Swamp, Florida, who is studying comparative psychosis in meerkats. Good luck with that. And he wants to know this. What is your opinion of Bob Woodward's comments saying that there is now a constitutional problem, and what sort of danger is he claiming that the election is in? As many of you know, Woodward is the author of the book Rage, which is based on a series of interviews with President Trump. And this book became controversial, and by controversial, I mean heavily advertised to boost Woodward's bank account, when it was revealed that comments made by the president included those about the Chinese coronavirus, in which he indicated he had downplayed the dangers of the illness to minimize public fear. This bit of sleazy book marketing alone should give you an idea of what I think of Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward came to fame as one of the reporters, along with Carl Bernstein, whose investigative reporting on the Watergate hotel burglary led to President Nixon's resignation. Their work would go on to become the basis for the movie All the President's Men. In the movie, Woodward is portrayed by Robert Redford. Woodward's penchant for self-promotion begins with the casting of Redford in that movie. Look at the two of them. They're not exactly twins, are they? No more than Bo Derek and Bo Schembechler. It's important to note that with this casting, the myth of Bob Woodward began. In a recent interview with CNN's Wolf Blitzer, Woodward said that President Trump's unwillingness to, quote, stabilize the upcoming election represented a, quote, constitutional threat, and that due to that threat and the ineffectual nature of the Supreme Court, Woodward suggested that Congress needed to act to stabilize the election. At no point did Woodward define stabilize, describe what constitutional threat he was referring to, nor explain what Congress should do in response. As far as all of that goes, it was the perfect fake news segment. It was completely devoid of any facts, filled with conjecture, and provided a conclusion that was completely incompatible with reality. Blitzer is sitting there with his blow-dried hair looking like a perfectly docile werewolf, while Woodward bloviates on subjects on which he is clearly ignorant. One must presume, and you have to presume, because neither Woodward nor Blitzer would confirm that, quote, in stabilizing the election, Woodward is suggesting that the president's remark on mail-in balloting fraud and the implication that it undermines the election results are the subjects that are in fact, quote, destabilizing the voting. The problem is the president is right. Each day we are confronted with new reports and allegations about postal employees hoarding Trump cast ballots rather than delivering them, ballots being dumped in the gutters on highways, and ballot harvesting schemes across the nation. As of this moment, credible voter fraud incidents have occurred and are being investigated in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Minnesota, North Carolina, Florida, California, and Texas. These stories are being reported in the very same press of which Blitzer and Woodward are supposedly a part, and yet both ignore the facts and suggest the president is not calming fears about the issue. Isn't it funny, and by funny I mean ironic, that the president's remarks as they appear in Woodward's new book are described as, quote, lying, when in fact he was trying to forestall a public panic, Remember, he, quote, downplayed the threats of coronavirus. Now, as he trumpets the real news and real threat that voter fraud represents, rather than downplaying it, these two nincompoops suggest he should be doing the reverse. Odd. Woodward, as a constitutionalist, is as incompetent as Woodward, the journalist. In speaking with Blitzer, he says that Congress should act independently of the two other co-equal branches of government and assume unilateral control of the government. This is like saying that the lions should be put in charge of feeding their fellow zoo denizens. In this model of governance, the kings of the jungle are in charge of both zoo personnel and selecting the menu. As you can imagine, the results of this type of governance would be a decrease in zoo workers, giraffes, zebras, monkeys. Well, you get the idea. Woodward's plan, in fact, is to put Wile E. Coyote in charge of all his fellow cartoon characters. In that type of scenario, there aren't enough anvils or cliffs to stop the proliferation of stupidity. We have three co-equal branches of government for the expressed purpose of preventing one from acting beyond its scope of powers and taking control of the apparatus of government. Woodward suggests that to solve a constitutional threat that he does not define, we should shred the Constitution by eliminating the checks and balances of those three co-equal branches of government in favor of ceding power to the one branch he thinks is more amenable to his point of view. This is both nonsense and exposes how ignorant the press has become. Well, I hope that answers the question. If not, we'll try again next week. Our next question comes from Amy, an ambidextrous egg inspector working on an ostrich farm in Battle Creek, Michigan. Amy asks, you say your son is getting married. What advice do you have for the newlyweds? Well, my first instinct is to rely on the rare wisdom of the late, great Del Griffith, who said, like your job, love your wife. As you may recall, Del Griffith was the traveling salesman played by John Candy in the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. My next instinct, which is actually my first instinct, is to refer to my wife for guidance. Having been married for more than 30 years, I know better than to answer a question of that magnitude without first seeking approval from the brains of this particular outfit. But let's keep this our little secret. All kidding aside, my advice to the newlyweds is very simple and is taken from the words of Jesus, and it is this: love one another as I have loved you. Marriage is a journey, not a destination, and that journey is fueled by love. That's the happy hour. I'm the fantastic Fogey. God bless and good night.